Have you not heard of Agenda 2063?
What is Agenda 2063?
Agenda 2063 is the master plan for transforming Africa into a global powerhouse of the future by the year 2063, and ensuring that Africa's development is driven by investments that are sustainable and benefits all people, and that development activities will promote unity, self-determination, freedom, progress, and collective prosperity, pursued under the ideals of Pan-Africanism and the vision of Africa's Renaissance. Do you know Agenda 2063 aims to increase investment in key infrastructure, improve agricultural practices and better management of our natural resources, as well as access to quality health and education to enable Africans to unlock their full potential? And with a well-educated society and empowered people, our communities will thrive as Africans actively participate in decision-making to promote good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, and the right to live in stable and peaceful societies. And a peaceful and secure Africa will provide the right environment we desire for growth and development, productive employment and decent work for all. We can build more world-class infrastructure, sustain industrialization and foster innovation as we invest in the blue ocean economy, agriculture, advanced technology, transportation, health, renewable energy, commerce and finance, and even outer space technology, translating into a better standard and quality of living for all African people. The Agenda 2063 promotes a united Africa with a strong cultural identity, common heritage, values and ethics. Agenda 2063 will enable Africa to position itself as a strong, united, resilient and influential global player.
Wow, that is the Africa I want. That is the Africa I want.
That is the Africa I want.
That is the Africa I want. That is the Africa I want. This is the Africa we want.
Ethiopia has appreciated the decision of the African Union member states to convene the 35th AU session here in Ethiopia in person. But there have been just some lobbying from the Western countries against this move. And this shows the current African leaders, like their predecessors, acknowledge Ethiopia's historic and unwavering stance to advance African and Pan-African agendas. And the implications of hosting the summit here in Addis Ababa are quite immense. And it will demonstrate peace and stability in the country, which is fundamental in Ethiopia's fight against a global campaign of tarnishing the country's image. This is our weekly roundtable. I'm joined here in the studio by Dr. Antener Getachew from Ethiopian Strategic Affairs Institute, and he's a senior researcher there, and also Binyam Alamayo, editor-in-chief at ABC English. And thank you, both of you, for coming to the studio.
Glad to have you.
Okay. Today we will talk on the idea of just relocating the African Union headquarters since the start of the African organization. Also just taking this current 35th AU summit to other cities in Africa. And this has been just, I think, part of the global campaign against defaming Ethiopia, disinforming the global community about Ethiopia, and also misinforming the global community on the security issues of Ethiopia. There have been just lots of issues, misinformation like Addis Ababa is to fall under in the hands of the TPLF and so on. And many embassies, many Western governments and their embassies here in Addis have been just releasing some ungrounded information regarding the security situation of here in Addis. And now the current AU session is just to be moved, but the African Union decided in the favor of Ethiopia, and particularly the favor of Africa, I can say, because it is just an issue of Pan-Africanism, and it is an issue of deciding for Africa by Africanists. And what is just your reaction on this issue? Let me start from you.
Thank you so much for having me here and requesting me to give my reflection on this very pressing and timely issue regarding the 35th AU summit to be held in Addis, and it was really just announced before to relocate the headquarters, or not actually in the real sense of the matter, the headquarters, rather the hub of the summit from Addis Ababa. Okay. But in a very recent times, the decision has been revoked by the AU leaders. That was a good news, and the Prime Minister have already give due credit for deciding, just thinking critically about it. Is not an issue of Ethiopia, it is not an issue of some country in Africa or a sub-region, rather it is an issue of all black people, because it has some symbolic importance regarding the relocating or revoking their decision. So here, let's see these two things first, historical and the pertinent problem that Ethiopia is in. Historically, there are attempts by external or colonial powers or imperialism that the symbolic meaning of Ethiopia is highly attached with Pan-Africanism. Historically, there are some points that we cannot smash down why Ethiopia becomes the center of Pan-Africanism or the center of the AU headquarters here. One, it is all about the black people defiance. That is one symbolic meaning. Ethiopians are the black people which give rise to a ray of hope for the rest of the black people who are spread all over the world, including the Caribbean, in the US, in Europe. That give a ray of hope for all the black people in the early days of King Menelik and later to the day of Emperor Haile Selassie. So we cannot smash down this. This is a historical fact. Relocating the headquarters from Addis Ababa is not as simple as what we think. The other problem that they use as a pretext is that the political quagmire and crisis that Ethiopia is presently with an internal civil war or an internal crisis in the northern part of Ethiopia. They use as a pretext, of course, thinking about security issue should be a concern for any human being, including the Western. I don't blame the situation in that way. But if there are betterments, security betterments every time, there will not be any kind of announcement or press release from the concerned, but especially from the State Department and the responsible embassy of the US embassy here in Addis, renouncing or just reconsidering the decision, or just maybe security alarm. This is a problem. So there might be some kind of, they already stated an agenda, and they give it to the media, the Western media. They bring it into public attention. Finally, they are going to make it into policy action. This is a procedure. So we can see that there is some kind of, internally in Africa also, there is just a kind of bone of contention to have the headquarters in their own city, capital towns. Just if you remember, I think in 2002, probably the former Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Meles Zenawi, has just defeated the internal aggression by Africa, especially from the side of Libya, Senegal, and whatsoever, in an attempt to relocate the headquarters of Ethiopia. One thing that can really appreciate that former Prime Minister might be just in history is the struggle to just give. Ethiopia is always devoted to the cause of Pan-Africanism of all the black people. Exactly. Probably there are ups and downs. Before 50 years, during the reign of Emperor Haile Selassie, what Ethiopia acts as an African cause might not be similar with the present case, because there are many changes, economical changes, political changes, and there are emerging African countries which are very much better in terms of economic development as compared to Ethiopia. You can see the Nigerian case, the Northern Africa, the Algeria, the Egypt, the Libya, because of their oil capacity, probably we are not just showing betterment in terms of economy. This is one reason that they put or tabled in order to justify the headquarters from Addis Ababa should be relocated. So we can see into ventures historically and the present situation.
Okay. Well, that's good. As you said, just you mentioned that it is the US that is just leading this campaign, because it has been just the US that more than maybe 5 times, to my knowledge, that has been just renouncing a lot of ungrounded information about the security situation in Addis Ababa and letting the its citizens to get out of Addis. But in fact, they have not done that. What they did instead is just coming to Ethiopia, flocking to Ethiopia. A number of US citizens I can witness in different events that I've been just covering. There were just a number of Americans just coming to Ethiopia. So that was just completely ungrounded. Well, let's now watch a short clip on the same issue by scholars and get back to our discussion.
Try to put Ethiopia, it's an attempt to put Ethiopia in quagmire. That means, if there are diplomatic offices, international organizations here, it is beneficial to Ethiopia, to its economy, to its influence, to different activities. Many foreign investors come, contribute to the development of the country. Shifting the offices of these international diplomatic offices would mean is to paralyze the economy of Ethiopia and then to make Ethiopia poor, because Ethiopia resisted foreign influence, foreign interventions in the affairs of our nation.
The issue of moving African Union headquarters can be, for them, from their perspective, can be an instrument to disempower Ethiopia, not only economically, but also politically and socially. Ethiopia, because of historical reason, is seen by African brothers and sisters as a role model, as a sign of resilience, sovereignty, and freedom.
Okay, Binyam, can you just reflect on what he has said? He's just an economic expert, and he tried to say things in economic terms.
Okay, thank you, Sunday, for having me. So these gentlemen from the universities here were saying it very well. There's an economic advantage to be gained from hosting such international or continental events here in Addis Ababa. And so the Western powers knew this very well when they pushed to relocate conference centers away from Addis Ababa. It all started with the Western imperialist powers' interest in the Red Sea and the Horn of Africa region. Now that Ethiopia is a power to reckon with in this region, they do not like this, and they would leave no stone unturned to make sure that Ethiopia is undermined. So it starts with all that. Now the war provided them with a very good opportunity to delve into the internal affairs of the country and do something they like. And so when you host global or continental events of this magnitude in your country, you gain a lot of economic advantage, because it's about hotels, it's about conference tourism, it's also about conference halls. And so the conference industry was for quite some time booming in Addis Ababa, and that means attracting FDI by investors, because now that there's security, now that there's peace, and Ethiopia being the cradle of the anti-colonialist and Pan-Africanist struggle, that means there's a symbolic significance to it as well. And so the conference was booming for quite some time. If you stripe that away from Addis Ababa, then that means pulling the plug out of the government. And that means the government is going to crumble in a short period of time. So that was the calculation. Okay. And so they started pushing to get the conference center out of Addis Ababa. And that's what happened. But it didn't work because of the lobbying, because of the relentless struggle by the diaspora, thanks to the hashtag No More movement, as well as the rebirth of Pan-Africanism. Those, I think, are things we're going to dwell on. So that's what happened.
Okay, you're just right. Particularly the hashtag No More movement has just created a platform for the world to learn what is just the Western countries doing here in Ethiopia. And even just nowadays, there have been just concerns by the Africanists as well as those countries whose national interests have been just intervened by the US and like countries, that there is just, there must be a sort of point where the Westernists should stop intervening in African affairs, and Africa shall just start deciding everything by itself. There is such a scenario, as I understand, from those people who have just joined the hashtag No More movement. And again, the Ethiopian diaspora is a big game changer to this global campaign against Ethiopia. I remember that it is just the very day the Ethiopian government is making a big ceremony to welcome the Ethiopian diasporas here at Friendship Square, that the American embassy at the same time released that Ethiopia is not safe and please do evacuate kind of thing. So the coming home of the Ethiopian diaspora has just changed the scenario, that they are just showing, they are posting about what is happening in Ethiopia, in North Ethiopia, and also the destruction made by the TPLF. They are just exposing more than the local media here. So that is really a great thing to change the current image of Ethiopia. I appreciate that, and that must be continued. Well, now let's try to see the political and diplomatic attempts by these Western-led imperialist powers, I can say, on all these plots to relocate the African Union headquarters as well as shift the upcoming annual meetings. What diplomatic and political intentions did these countries have?
Okay. I think you are asking me about the counter strategy, how Ethiopia can cope up with the emerging pressure coming from the Western Cap, especially.
Yeah, that's just what we will talk about later after the break. And now let's talk about the political and diplomatic motives behind the Western-led imperialist powers to relocate the African Union headquarters, as well as just the current upcoming, annual meeting of the African Union.
Okay. Let's associate their intention with the very tenets of Pan-Africanism. What do you mean by Pan-Africanism? Pan-Africanism is all about bringing African unity, economic freedom, and political liberty. Just political liberty can be achieved through just policy freedom. This is what Pan-Africanism means. How Pan-African can get momentum? We need to have a historical memory. We need to have a cultural memory that the black people can put themselves parallel to just like the other race in the world. A good, important, symbolic significance is Ethiopia and only Ethiopia. It has a glorious past in terms of history, defiance, independence, written history, which is probably the only writing system in Africa, which is indigenous to Africa. These have some kind of symbolic importance to the mind of the black people. That is why this is very much related with Ethiopianism all over the world. You can go to maybe the Caribbean world, maybe the Rastafarians, or the black people everywhere. So they take Ethiopia as a symbol of freedom, that black people can think and can equate them just like other human beings. This is very much important. So whenever Ethiopia is struggling with imperialism, well, neo-colonial forces, the Western camp well understood that it is very much difficult and it takes to the wrong way. The hashtag normal movement showed this. When we just as the diaspora community of Ethiopia in residing in the US have started the hashtag movement all over the world, including in Africa. For example, in Mali, there are black protests rising against colonial legacies, just like against the French and the like. It is still going on. Our African brothers from different areas, just like from Uganda, South Africa, joining this campaign because they know in history, they have a good memory. Regardless of this, regardless of what Ethiopia has been economically whatsoever, we might be poor, but nobody cannot snatch that glorious past. But the problem is internally, there is a paradox at the same time. Whenever we think of Pan-Africanism, Prime Minister Abiy has did a lot as a beginning in bringing about regional integration, in bringing about rapportment with Eritrea, in bringing about bar terms that happened during a conflict in the usage maritime between Somalia and Kenya, with the two Sudans, within South Sudan between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. This is, as our Prime Minister have the cause and a genuine commitment in bringing about Pan-Africanism and to bring Ethiopia to the forefront, like his forefathers, like Emperor Haile Selassie. But the problem is the domestic politics. Things might fall apart. Whenever we think of this, at the same time, we are fascinated and we are very much endowed with separatist ideology, ethnic politics, that arises, that brings about ethnic federalism. So unless we are getting out of this trap, it is a paradox and sometimes puzzling to think about Pan-Africanism, the bigger reunion. Political reunion might take longer because African linguistically are diversified, but economic integration can come first, and it has been started in sub-regions. In the whole, in East Africa, we have betterments and good hopes we see. So try to think in that way. So the Western is staggering to relocate the center, the headquarters from here because they fear that these have a historic advantage, these people, a better memory in fighting against colonial aggression. That is the very reason we need to address.
Okay, you have already just mentioned, Dr. Anthony, a very nice point is that dear viewers, this is ETV English and you are just watching our weekly round table, and we are talking about the agendas of relocating the African Union out of Addis Ababa to other African cities, and also taking the current session, I mean the upcoming 35th African Union Summit to other sessions, or just making it online or virtually. Dr. Anthony, you have just mentioned a lot of issues regarding the political and diplomatic attempts of the Western-led coalition against Ethiopia, and what should Ethiopia make to counterbalance such sort of international diplomatic lobbying and political pressures?
Thank you so much. That is a good point towards mentioning here now. The counter media warfare is very much important for Ethiopia. The Western camp that is led by the US set an agenda regarding the current conflict in Ethiopia. And sometimes that was a misguided policy orientation or policy action they have took. The US administration, the incumbent, the Biden administration probably have maybe relied on some personalities which have closer ties with the predecessor or the former TPLF leader leading the country for the last 27 years. And even including Ethiopia, we failed diplomatically. There are ups and downs in terms of just doing the diplomacy aggressively. During the early days of the conflict till now, there are betterments, of course, especially regarding with the public diplomacy. That means using Ethiopian public everywhere as a diplomatic tool rather than the traditional diplomacy. There are betterments, of course, but still there are flaws and gaps. So for example, in our PR strategy, we don't have a well-organized communication ecosystem created, guided by a centralized ad hoc committee it might be. Yes, that this committee, just recently I have heard that there is a kind of proclamation mentioned to be endorsed about the inauguration of such, the launching of such ad hoc committee to do the public relation work effectively than better. Many Ethiopians suggest this. That is a failure. So first we need to identify issues. Agenda setting is a very distinguished field of research that found itself as the intersection of political process and communication research. So our media, how can you set agenda? Every time we pile up agenda after an agenda. Sometimes these issues might be nonsense, untimely. So we have problems of prioritizing issues. Agenda setting is a political process. So we need to just, what is our timely and just pressing agenda for Ethiopia this time? We don't have any agenda than curbing this aggression of the TPLF invading course and saving Ethiopia from total disintegration. And at the same time, political disability, bringing about political stability for a common goal, bringing about prosperity of the people. So we need to frame an issue, we need to set an agenda, a collection of, or a set of issues we bring into first to the media attention. Unless we bring an agenda into the media attention, it can't get a public exposure. Once the media will bring into the public attention, how can we do that? We may employ lobbyists. We need to just abide by the pragmatic situation in the 21st century. We are not going to just blaming all about the aggression of imperialism. If really that exists, we are not always crying over it. Rather, we need to do our own assignments internally. How Ethiopian, every citizen of Ethiopia is concerned and being a diplomat for the concerning and timely cause that the country is facing. So after such agendas are just getting attention into the media, then the public will be aware, the global community, the public. Finally, this will be translated into a policy action. That means law enforcement. It might be maybe the Western power, the superpower, whatsoever. This is the way we need to just do. So we need to hammer. But things are sporadic. When it comes to the Ethiopian media discourse, things become discourse. Some media are very much busy in doing something that are really not worthy of investing at this time. Some others have not common understanding about even the war. We are in different feelings. Some ultimately will be tired of seeing people it is out of their business. This should be avoided. What should be done is that there should be an organized ad hoc committee to lead the Ethiopian media discourse to defend the media campaign or the total pressure that is coming from the Western camp. One instrument that bringing about this pressure and psychological warfare is the media, the Western media. We need to just counterbalance this. In that way, I think there are betterments after the hashtag movement, after Ethiopians are using the social media, the Twitter, and the like. Effectively, there are betterments. The other thing is on the ground, the Ethiopian government have showed immense capacity of counter-battling the TPLF aggression. The Western camp always just led by a power balance.
Yeah.
At the very time, at the beginning of when TPLF was coming to until Shawa, here north of Shawa, they feel that probably this organization, these entities might have the capacity to overtake the power. They may just balance. So they don't want to feel secure. They don't want to lose their strategic importance in the Horn of Africa. That is why they are just always making their decision time and again. There are fluidity of decision making on the part of, but now there are betterments. There are betterments in terms of diplomacy. There are betterments in terms of showing our capacity in counter-battling the TPLF aggression. There are betterments on the ground in every sector. But still, we need to have a unified Ethiopia. We need to have a unity of the people. We need to just negotiable issues for the time being should be out of the table. Okay. We need to focus on the priority issues that are really timely and pressing to sustain Ethiopia as a country.
Well, so we have just taken much of the time, and this winds up, your points winds up today's roundtable. This has been just a conversation with Biniam Alamayo, Editor-in-Chief of ETV English, and also Dr. Antene Getachew, Senior Researcher from Institute of Strategic Affairs. Thank you for coming and just reflecting your wonderful views on our agendas. Thank you for watching us, and see you next week.
We are almost graduating. What does the future hold for us African youth?
After graduating from college, is securing a job certain?
I want to further my education. Why shouldn't I leave this country to seek other opportunities?
As an aspiring fashion designer who would like to trade in textile all over Africa, how do I get funding for my business?
Trade? Are we even sure of economic stability? As for me, I just want to expand our family farm and set up a food processing company. But how can I easily transport and sell my goods to other African countries?
Have you not heard of Agenda 2063?
What is Agenda 2063?
Agenda 2063 is the master plan for transforming Africa into a global powerhouse of the future by the year 2063, and ensuring that Africa's development is driven by investments that are sustainable and benefits all people, and that development activities will promote unity, self-determination, freedom, progress, and collective prosperity pursued under the ideals of Pan-Africanism and the vision of Africa's Renaissance. Do you know Agenda 2063 aims to increase investment in key infrastructure, improved agricultural practices and better management of our natural resources, as well as access to quality health and education to enable Africans to unlock their full potential? And with a well-educated society and empowered people, our communities will thrive as Africans actively participate in decision-making to promote good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, and the right to live in stable and peaceful societies. And a peaceful and secure Africa will provide the right environment we desire for growth and development, productive employment and decent work for all. We can build more world-class infrastructure, sustain industrialization and foster innovation as we invest in the blue ocean economy, agriculture, advanced technology, transportation, health, renewable energy, commerce and finance, and even outer space technology, translating into a better standard and quality of living for all African people. The Agenda 2063 promotes a united Africa with a strong cultural identity, common heritage, values and ethics. Agenda 2063 will enable Africa to position itself as a strong, united, resilient and influential global player.
Wow, that is the Africa I want.
That is the Africa I want.
That is the Africa I want.
That is the Africa I want. That is the Africa I want.
This is the Africa